working with brides from start to finish for their very special day. I left the corporate world and in 2009 created Women Entrepreneurs Worldwide. The team of WLOTUS, which we call WEW, leads initiatives focused on global cultural relationships, creating networking bridges and educating women and entrepreneurs in alignment with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. WEW works centers on strengthening economic sustainability for women and families through collaboration, knowledge sharing, and international engagement. I am a lifetime honorary member of All Ladies League in New Delhi, India, a global speaker, chairperson for the United States chapter. I have received various recognitions such as Iconic Woman Creating a Better World for All and Exceptional Women of Excellence in India. I joined the Advisory Council of Women Economic Forum in 2017. I've been featured in Dr. Shasi Gul's Qatar Women Real Stories, Safi Talks, Sarita, Business Week, India. In 2024, I was appointed state chair, North Carolina G100 US for WLOTUS. I partner with Coding Girls of Afghanistan for receiving online instructions, working towards the possibility of obtaining employment with online companies. I initiated Project Warehouse in Nigeria, an opportunity for those to begin to work up and have businesses and be self-sufficient. It is indeed an honor to be invited to moderate this webinar and be among these esteemed women and enlightened about their lived experiences. Much appreciation for this webinar being organized by the Islamic Chamber Training Academy. ICTA is the academic arm of the Islamic Chamber of Commerce and Development, representing the private sector in 57 member Islamic countries. It was established to enhance human capabilities, the Islamic world, and elevate the private sector and its organizations. Our objective today is to redefine leadership by exploring how personal lived experiences can be transformed into global movements. We aim to provide you with a blueprint, practical, for scaling social impact, amplifying women's voices to create resilience and interconnect world. Before presenting our first speaker, just a few instructions for conducting the webinar. One, speakers will have 10 to 15 minutes to briefly introduce themselves and answer pre-selected questions. Two, the first round of pre-selected questions will be presented to the speakers by the moderator. Speaker will then answer the question. After the speaker has answered pre-selected questions, we will move to the next speaker. After all four speakers have answered the pre-selected questions, we will be chosen from the chat to present questions identified for the speakers. 2 minutes will be given to speaker to answer the question briefly. In consideration of time, if attendees further questions, please submit your questions if you have questions after this webinar, please submit your questions to the email that is going to be placed in the chat, and we will make every effort to respond. Notations: all the speakers on the panel are deserving of me expanding on their bios. Therefore, please bear me. Notation: I am a stickler. I'm a stickler for name pronunciation. Therefore, speakers will announce their name, their name during the event. Just in case I mispronounce it, and please charge it to my head and not to my heart. With all of this, we will begin. Thank you. Our first speaker is Miss Latani Al Canoso, and I'm going to have her, and I really appreciate this. I'm going to have her introduce herself, but I'm going to read you her bio, and it is just amazing. She's Chief Executive Officer and founding member of the Business and Professional Women Association. Her employment strategy, women's inclusion, workplace expert. Professional public speaker, catalyst of change, initiative found development, programs, design, MENA. Okay. Miss Thani, Albani, and I'm sorry that I did this, Diana, is a transformative leader in both the private and profit sectors in Jordan, renowned pioneering approach to leading leadership. I'm sorry. And forget my thing here. She has a proven track record of successful navigating organizations. And I don't know what's going on with my thing here, but I'm going to switch for just 1 minute. And hopefully this doesn't come up. Always technical difficulties, but we will meet the challenge here today. And we're going to pick up again with Ms. Thani's bio. And I really do apologize to her for this technical difficulty.
No worries, Shirley. Do you want me to pick it up from here?
I do want to finish her first paragraph.
Okay.
And she has such an interesting bio, I don't want to leave it here.
Thank you.
Okay. If you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
Okay. She is a transformative leader in both the private and nonprofit sectors in Jordan, renowned for her pioneering approach to leadership, agility. She has a proven track record of successfully navigating organizational change, building cohesive teams, and managing complex business conversations. Her diverse expertise spans across building and restructuring companies to drive sustained growth. She formerly served as the regional fundraiser and development director at Mowgli Mentoring MENA, where she played a critical role in establishing a mentorship-driven approach to support and empower significantly entrepreneurs across the MENA region. Her efforts were instrumental in significantly increasing the growth and visibility of the Mowgli Foundation throughout the region. Currently, she is the CEO of the Business and Professional Women's Association, BPWA, an association advocating for gender equality and the inclusion of women in the workforce. Under her leadership, BPWA has launched several initiatives aimed at bridging the gender gap and empowering women across various sectors. Her tenure has marked a period of enhanced performance and increased impact for women in Jordan. Apart from her executive roles, she is a seasoned public speaker and has served as a keynote speaker and panelist at numerous local, regional, international events, especially on topics related to women empowerment and entrepreneurship. Her strong communication and facilitation skills have enabled her to empower individuals, foster dialogue, and guide discussions towards innovative and strategic outcomes. With that, I'm going to let her take over here and introduce herself, and I'm sure she will correct me. I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. But I was trying to rest you off the technical challenges that you have been facing today. So I'm sorry for that and for that challenge. First of all, allow me to thank the Islamic Chamber organization and the Training Academy for this webinar and for this collective, amazing, inspiring peer panelists that I have learned a lot through the preparation sessions. And I'm so excited that I am being linked and sitting with them on such an honorable panel. So thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for our amazing audience from all over the world. And I hope that we will be able to add more insights and build together a better even understanding how can we really support the growth of leaders within our region and ensure more women leaders as well are being seen and taken as role models. I think I'm going to be very brief about introducing myself by saying I like, my favorite title is A Catalyst of Change. And that has been taken through the years when I looked into my journey that is very rooted with my values, but at the same time, it's about being able to transform any issues or any challenges into an opportunity. That has been my key strengths. And from there, I believe that this is why I do exist today, because I do believe I think positively of any challenge and try to find any solution to take it forward. I do believe I'm a strategic global leader where I help in shaping resilient institutions and driving sustainable growth through governance, excellence, and innovation, as well, or based actually on trusted partnerships. This is in a very nutshell, I would say, and thankfully, Shirley, you have introduced me. Would you like to ask me the question, or how do you want to take this?
Yes, I'm going to ask you the question now, the one that has been chosen. So the question is, in a leadership landscape that often rewards traditional rigid styles, how did you leverage your lived experience to build a mission that feels authentic and capable of resonating with women across diverse borders?
It's a big question, so let me start. But it's
Take your time.
but it's very inspiring as well. And let me start by saying, and I think I've been thinking about this for the past 2 days. And all of a sudden, when I put on my camera today and I said, you know what? Actually, if we're going to go in simple answer, I would say it's the power of will. And it's literally the power of will, which is the inner force that actually pushes us to rise, even when everything around us and the logic says stop and pause. But our will is there. And I think we as women, and apology for our amazing men and male attendees, but to be honest, as women, our will strength is much, much closer. So I think I will start by saying that is as the big, let's say, picture where I see it happening. But let me go back with history with you in my journey. And I think and believe that I have been very lucky as a professional woman to be able to witness firsthand how potential can be limited sometimes, not by the lack of talent, but by the lack of access, belief, and opportunity. And the reason I say I was fortunate because I was able to put all my efforts through my journey to be able to support and help and create success stories that are all able to overcome those challenges and issues that is being faced. Let me share with you some numbers before I go there. And I looked into the region, and there's a lot of similarities between Jordan and the region. If we look at Jordan with a very specific lens, we see that unfortunately in the past few years, we have been struggling with a very limited economic participation for women that does not exceed 50%. If we look also at the workforce in general, 40% of our women leave the workforce by the age of 40. And that's another alarming number. If we look at the global scene, we see only 28.8% of senior leadership roles are held by women. In comparison, the space as a space is outspaced by males in general. As per the World Economic Forum, we would require between, depending on what we're looking at, but by the least number, between 123 years up to 135 years to close the gender gap. And that is a reality that we see and witness on a daily basis. Yet, let's look into more specific challenges and issues that I have been able to see on a daily basis with our women. Today, there is a lot of challenges when it comes to the life balance mechanism. I'm not speaking about getting the life balance, but speaking about life mechanism. It's about getting lack of policies that are supporting women in the workplace and in the workforces. The gap in nursing graduates. We're speaking about so many, unfortunately, challenges that has been hindering women economic participation in joining the forces. One key factor that we've been able to find out during BPWA journey was literally the social and cultural norms. And those are either personal from the women themselves or by the community and the environment around them. So if we speak about the women themselves, it's about confidence, lack of confidence because of the environment that she was brought up into, or basically as well as the limiting beliefs of her talent and her potential. And last but not least is the supporting environment, whether they accept or they don't, or support or give her all the nudges that they can provide. But today we need to look at it as an eye opener. What has worked in order for us to overcome those challenges? One realization that came to my understanding that those issues were not limited to Jordan. Actually, it was globally seen, and in every country I go, when we are talking as females, we find that there is a similarity of the challenges that we face. A similarity, sometimes, I'll give you an example. When I was at a younger age, I remember that I felt that my colleagues were not accepting me, my male colleagues. I was in a male dominant, I was in foreign exchange in trading, and my male colleagues were not accepting me. It was a feeling, and I could not prove it. And I was always denying that that feeling is real until I was able to understand. No, I was bullied. When I was understanding at a later stage, I was able to understand. I was literally bullied by my peers at that moment because they were not accepting me as a female, as their colleague, equivalent in the same position as a dealer. So this is where it comes, those facts that we really need to be acknowledging them to be able to overcome them and do that shift that we want to do and solve the issue that we have. But today, let's think about more positively. How can we turn the lived experience into a leadership component? In many systems, leadership is still defined by titles, structure, and hierarchy. But in reality, women, they lead differently. And to be honest, leadership is differently. I come from the school that says serve to lead. And the more you serve, the more you will be able to lead more people. Because we lead from our lived experience. We lead from proximity. We lead from empathy and with empathy as well. And this is not a weakness. This is actually our strength. This is what makes us as a strategic advantage for us as female leaders. And it's rooted in real stories about our lives and how we can take it forward. Also, all those women who are not in the working space and spectrum, we know that there are a lot of movements that are trying to help them to start and be aware that they are bringing up also those leaders of the world. I think one power that in my journey was so effective was the sisterhood and the support that we got through sisterhoods. BPWA is a network that brings together women in the workforce from professional backgrounds and business backgrounds, and we create a space that exchange knowledge and we network to build on each other. And we take it forward in order for us to be able to impact and do advocacy and make the change that we are seeking. But today, it's about listening deeply before acting, being able to be respectful of each other, work around it, and get what we want and create the right spaces that we want. Um, One of the things that I would like also to share on this context, there's a lot of ways I told you, so I'm a little bit trying to figure out how I'm going to about passing the torch. And we've learned through BPWA journey that from generation to generation, we're passing the torch by helping others and empowering other young females to be empowered, listen and learn and take things forward. My end story would be kind of or contribute to during my journey. And back in I think between 2015 and 2017, we were struggling by the number of low participation of women in the workforce. We were economically in having a lot of struggles, and we were looking into options. And as a result, one of the thoughts that I believed was important is how can we increase women-owned businesses and led businesses to come into the trade scene and start exporting. We export unit, we call it today. It's the first of its kind in the region where we are helping and supporting women-owned businesses or led businesses to be more export ready, access to market, capacity development, access to information, access to partners, and facilitating of a problem or an issue where we believe, and this is why we became a leader in the market when it comes to this, because we were able to identify the issue or the challenge, and we looked into creating the right solution for them, bringing together the network and the community, representing all women-owned businesses and led businesses. We are getting a lot of even access to changes in the regulatory framework in order for us to have more women benefit from all the opportunities that are there. Bottom line, it's a struggle to universal impact. It's a reality, and this is something that we can do together if we have the right potential, we have the right well, and again, I insist on the of the well because that's what makes us grow and take things steps forward and overcome all. The struggle is your credential. It's the strength that can create for you the future. And true leadership is not about the title, about turning your proximity to the problem into a blueprint that answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bonnie. We appreciate that, and we were enlightened definitely about your journey and things that you have lived, and I do appreciate it. I have one question for you, though, and I paid attention to everything you were saying, and I'm taking notes and so forth. But I do have a question. Why do you think, because you mentioned that women left the workforce there at the age of 40. What is that, what do you think causes that?
It's
Or
the
what do
lack
you know causes that? I'm sorry.
research paper about this, but number one, as I mentioned, it was the social and cultural norms. So women are expected to leave, their priority or their priority job in life is to take care of their children. So even if the female at a certain and but she's expected to leave the job, not him. Even if her husband is not employed, she's expected to take. So the care system within the context for females are the caretakers in general. And we know that this is a fact in Jordan and all around the world. But number two is there isn't, unfortunately, transportation or flexible arrangements at the workspace for them to take it forward. So all of these are issues that contribute to them making the decision to leave the workforce. And for them to go back into the workforce, that's another struggle. And we have been able Al-Ittihad for comeback program where they facilitate even the return of females who had to leave for like between 5 to 10 years the workforce as a result of taking care of their children or sometimes even their elderly, the caregiver.
Okay, thank you. And in most cases, I'm not expecting you to know the entire thing, but is there compensation for women, especially if they become the full provider?
No, unfortunately,
Okay,
legal work. But that maternity leave is conditioned. It's up to 90 days. That was newly actually approved in the country level as a regulatory. Previously, it was 70 days. But that's only maternity leave with the condition that after that period, they would go back to the work.
okay. Well, I'm
Otherwise
learning a
than that,
lot
no, we
here.
don't have. And that's why I mentioned there isn't a supporting system. Sorry?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for enlightening us and really giving us a broad scope of what's going on, in Jordan. And I know that we can hear more from you later on when our uh, participants want to ask some questions. But thank you again. And I want to move on to our second speaker, who is Miss Irana Tatardichuk. Okay, and I'm going to give you a brief of her bio. She's executive director of ITFC, founder of Women in General Gender Equality Research, Economics, and Project Management expert. Ms. Tartarchuk is a distinguished expert in gender equality, economic development, and inclusive leadership with over 2 decades of spanning international organizations, academia, and the private sector. As a PhD in economics, an associate professor at the National University of Kivi Mohalo Academy, Irena bridges the gap between high-level research and the practical implementation of gender-responsive policies. Currently, she serves as the executive director of the Ukraine Investment and Trade Facilitation Center, where she leads initiatives focused on SME development and trade policy. As the co-founder of Women In, a community dedicated to disrupting gender stereotypes and stimulating female entrepreneurship in Ukraine, she has become a central figure in supporting women founders. Through initiatives like Grant and Grow, she provides women with the tools to strengthen business models, build robust funding strategies, and navigate the complexities of scaling enterprises during times of uncertainty. Her executive portfolio includes implementing the Women's Empowerment Principles, WEPS, with global corporations and serving on the advisory board for Reconomy, where she provides strategic guidance on adaptive management and regional economic development. A sought after mentor for programs like She's Next and Radar Tech, she is committed to fostering global sisterhood and creating multidisciplinary environments where women can lead with honesty, empathy, and resilience. And with that, I'm going to ask Miss Irena to take over for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm very happy to be here and thank you for invitation, Islamic Chamber of Commerce. And also I very like quite enjoying to such of event because it's very interesting always to know better the other countries and their situation with gender equality, their situation with women, support women, especially because quite often women are speakers in such of event. I don't know, or it's a shame, or maybe we can proud of this, but yes, so I'm very happy to be here. My name is Irina. Yes, I'm from Ukraine, and I've been dive to this topic of women's empowerment for about 10 years. Yes, I lead the NGO and I am a founder of the initiative Women In. We support women in business. We have more than 3,000 SMEs that lead by women. I also teach at the university in Manchester and University of in Kiev Mohila Academy. It's more than 100 years university, and I am a member of the advisory board of the Economy project. And to be honest, I haven't mentioned this before. I serve this project, this membership, maybe 2.5 years. But I didn't mention before we had in the last week event about board meetings and representative women in board advisory boards. And we discovered that it's not a lot of us. That's why we need to share more and more about this information that other women understood that they can join. So to this project as economy, or maybe to some boards in a corporative sector. Yes, I work as an entrepreneur and also I'm a consulting of SMEs, mentor, and I'm a mother of 2 children. But maybe I will share my journey, how this supporting women path began and why its development in this way and why I started to support women. It's interesting questions because it wasn't my goal. I haven't think about discrimination or support women from my childhood, for example, nothing like this. No one bullying me in school, at school, and I thought I wasn't discriminated at all. But everything started from my degree. I am the first person in my family to have a university degree. And because it's, during the Soviet Union era, higher education wasn't very common because having a job was more important. And my parents, grandparents, and even their parents all worked hard but didn't pursue higher education. So my chosen path to become a researcher and to work at the university wasn't influenced by family traditions. Honestly, it was more practical decision, completely unrelated to science. Why I mention this? Because I very like science, I very like numbers, and I think it's a power that give us some evidence to do some actions. But in my situation, I needed to stay in a big city rather than return to my small hometown. And it was just 2 options. Either find a job, which in that time was very difficult, or enter a PhD program. But the decision to do a PhD came quite unexpectedly. My ex-husband and I, we met our former lectures in a park, and she said to him, not to me, but to him, apply for the PhD program. We have 1 spot left and it needs to be filled. So go on. He wasn't interested of this. He said, no, I won't. And he added, so maybe Irina can. And, there are many reasons to be a researcher. Now, when I learn a lot information and studies about women researchers, I see that there are many of them join this area from different reasons. They include family influence, circumstances relating to findings, job, maybe city or place to live where they wanted to live, they wanted to stay, or maybe real passion for science, or maybe desire save the world or reinvent the wheel. So many reason. Also, it can be something like international recognition, from everyday motivation to very ambitious one. For me, my choice was simply about not return home. That's why I found this solution and I start my academic career at the university. I pick up very difficult topic. It was about state support for agricultural sector in the context of economic transformation. And as I later discovered, it was very difficult because we didn't have literature, we didn't have a scientist, I didn't have an expert who can help me with this, and it was very difficult time for Ukraine to develop this scientist journey. But in 2006, I finished my work. I had some conclusions, scientist conclusion. I created some recommendation, and I understood that this recommendation very good in a paper, but not in the real world. It wasn't about women at all. It was more about agricultural sector generally. But it's also had a lot of numbers, some calculation, complex academic terminology, and even government level or NGOs level experts, they not quite understand what I wanted to say and how they can use this in real life. And I didn't have a knowledge to recommend this more easy way to do this. But I was very disappointed, to be honest, from this, and it wasn't even nothing about gender, to put gender approach to this work, because it wasn't a trend in that period to think about women path or gender equality. But in 2017, I happened to see some job announcement for international project. And the role was required expertise in public finance management. So it was very similar what I did in my research, but more practical. Almost all the job requirements matched my experience, but there was one requirement I didn't meet. It was fluent English. I wasn't fluent, not even intermediate. I learned German at school and at the university, so it wasn't my language. I studied German. But still, I really wanted this job. I remember I reading somewhere in a blog that you are considered fluent in English if you can use lots of idioms or phrasal verbs. So I decided it's better to apply and fail maybe than not to try at all. I called my English teacher and I said to her, Tsvetana, we need to learn 5 idioms, practice a potential interview with them, and then I will get this job. So we learned a few expressions, including the phrase, don't work too hard. I don't know why I learned this, because this work supposed to be done very hard, and it was clearly hard work. But the job also required combining analytical skills with communicational skills. So I assumed this was because of working with government authorities, and not everyone can handle it. So we prepared sentence like, on the one hand, I'm very good, excellent with analytical skills, and on the other hand, I'm good with communicational skills, communications, and so on, and few phrasal verbs. So I went to this interview, and my future boss, he was from Manchester. I understood everything, and answered questions, but 40 minutes passed, and I hadn't yet used these phrases. But near the end, he asked, would you like to ask me something? And I said, oh, maybe you want to ask me about my communicational and analytical skills. So he said, of course. How are your skills in those areas? So, and I delivered our prepared lines on the one hand, on the other hand, and finally I said goodbye and don't work too hard. So I got this job, and it was my aha moment to change, because years later, when looking into low number of women in leadership positions, I found that women apply for promotions or new roles when they meet about 85% of requirements, while men applied at 55-60%. That is why I still remember, and I like to share my examples from this English interview, because it's completely changed my life. Just this simple step. After this project, I had a lot of projects where we supported women, we work with data. We also had a lot of educational programs with donors when we wanted to help women from the idea to export. But what was interesting, when I cooperated with and still work with government or with international donors, quite often I hear this phrase, oh, but why women just don't use their opportunities? Why they don't accept to apply for finance support? Why they don't do education? Why they don't apply for loan in a bank, for example? But yes, I absolutely agree with Tanya that because a lot of reasons. And in one of our projects, for example, we started to do research, and we wanted, it was a nationwide study on a profile of women entrepreneurs. And I thought that entrepreneurial skills are more important. They can solve, if we teach women these skills, 90% of problem will solve, and the low number of women in the market will increase. But no, because the challenges run much deeper when we finish this survey. Our survey and our interviews with women showed that around 70% of the barriers are linked to a lack of confidence, limited support from family and close circles, and of course many stereotypes and biases, such as women's place in the kitchen, and or your role is to be a mother. And what also very interesting, the further you go from major cities to the regions, to small village or small towns, the louder and more pronounced these challenges become. In addition, when it comes to specifically to training programs for women, something we always emphasize, we discovered a critical barrier. When we launch 3 days training session, we realized that one of the biggest obstacles to participations was the lack of child care support. Yes, many women simply couldn't attend because they had no one to look after their children, especially if these women were from small region and our training were in a big city. So on one hand, we were saying, come to Kiev, capital of Ukraine, we will train you, and we are creating opportunities for you. You become a businesswoman. But on the other hand, there was no support system in place to actually help them access these opportunities. And it wasn't very easy to solve, because we started negotiation with our donor. At that time, it was USAID, to include childcare support within our project. And the idea was to allow mothers to travel with their children and provide care during their trainings. And after months of discussions, we made it happen. So it wasn't even understandable in that period, like very fast. We didn't solve this very quick, this problem. It was months of negotiation, and then we made it happen. So even now, these women, they say thank you when we see each other, and it was very interesting that it helps them to apply to this program, then to another program, then to another program, and our colleagues from other projects also started to use this opportunity and to do these actions with childcare support. So yes, we have opportunity to create opportunity for women, but sometimes we don't understand why they don't apply, why they don't use this opportunity, because the problem can be more deeper. And one more thing that I want to emphasize, recently I finished my research about women in startup system, ecosystem, and investment. And we quite often we're talking about women support women, networking, and where we can cooperate with each other and stuff like this. But is it actually effective? So it turns from my research that we did, not always. Around 80% of the women entrepreneurs and startup founders I survived. They said that networking does not consistently lead to tangible results. Too often, these interactions remain just coffee or social gatherings, rather than leading to real decision, valuable connection, or actual contracts. No, in contrast, men tend to derive more direct business outcomes from similar settings. So, in this situation, women need investors because now they have less access to investors, and yet part of the reason is that majority of investors are men and they support male-led startups. And yes, we know a data that women-led startups often receive less funding but deliver higher returns. Yes, we know, but still we have challenge with this. So perhaps the questions is like, do we really need coffee or do we need capital? And recently it was emphasized in some discussion in Brussels that it was very clearly noticed that we don't need coffee, we need money. Yes, I work also with corporate business. I support women. I support companies to implement women empowerment principles, and we have 66 signatories companies that support women in workplace. They work with recruitment policies, with the mentorship coaching system, but we still face gender pay gap, and unfortunately, it has growing during the war in Ukraine. But at the same time, 45 companies joined to women empowerment principles. Our country signs Istanbul Conventions, and 45 companies sign these women empowerment principles during such difficult time in Ukraine, during the war. So it shows that we still have a lot of work to do. We still have some positive cases, but we need to keep our eyes open because women need support. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. And I have a question for you, but you've really answered it. And there were two things that I want to sort of pick up on. The question, I will put it out so that everyone would know what it is. It's often women experience systemic barriers through a unique lens. Could you share a specific challenge from your local community that served as a global eye-opener, revealing that your struggle was actually a shared thread in the universal fight for women's rights? You answered this perfectly. I mean, you gave information about this and supporting facts on it, but two things that you spoke on, which I want to ask you about. Number one, you spoke about women in confidence. How do you, and I'm going to ask both questions at the same time, how do you feel women build confidence? That's number one. Number two, you spoke on networking. I've always been sort of a question mark for the networking. I think there's, and it depends on where you are, there's approach. But I like what you said about that, about the coffee and so forth and the networking. And, you know, I want you to answer my first question about the confidence because I think we build confidence in different ways, but I want to hear it from you. And it's very interesting. So you have the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I will give you some examples about confidence and what I have from my cases with work with corporate businesses. For example, supply chain. So we currently working actively with the corporate sector to increase the number of women entrepreneurs within their supply chains and as participants in tenders and procurement processes. And we ask companies, so who is your supplier? Where do you buy your, I don't know, toilet paper, A4 paper, printer cartridges, and etc.? The procurement departments of this company said, oh, why does it matter? I said, please look at this data, your data from suppliers and who they are. So in most companies, up to 85% of these suppliers are male-owned businesses. For Ukraine, now we have a challenge because a lot of these businesses led by men, and men need to go to war. Instead, the women start to be director, leaders, owners of these companies. And they know nothing sometimes about supply chain. Knowledge, it's a first step to be more confident. If you know what you are doing, if you know how to apply to these tenders, for example, if you have examples of women in business who already working in these companies, you will apply. So good knowledge and good examples work very well. What we are doing, we match these companies and we organized for them some informative training from corporate businesses to women-led businesses, small and medium enterprises, where they explain how to apply to these tenders, how to be a part of this supply chain. And after this, they try. Another example, and I think it's a very good way to increase confidence. In our research, the last questions for interview was name 3 women who led business and who inspired you. Guess it was 15 interview, 15. Guess how many women answer and give me 3 examples or 3 names. Just 3 women. We don't know role models. But when I ask about men instead, I said, okay, if you don't know women, tell me the men. They share a lot of names. I will not name them, but call them, but a lot. So we don't have visible role models. The last hour conversation about board membership, or to be a member of some boards in the big businesses and corporation and project and etc. So the request or criteria how to become the member is very high standard. You need to be top management, you need to be investor, and quite often this board created by from industries, from companies, from industries, male-dominate industries. And of course, in these industries, you need to have experience in the top positions with investments or to be recommended by some members who is already in this board. Quite often, it's a man recommend men because we don't have a lot of top management, top leaders, women top leaders in these industries. And yes, we invite women to apply, but we don't give them a chance through this criteria to apply. So this is when we show them that here is the role models, and it's absolutely possible to be a cross-sectoral connection from different sector to apply for this male-dominated sector to board members position. It's possible. It can be in your life. So please apply. I think this like a knowledge and role models, it's the first steps, but very important steps, where they think, okay, if I know how to do it, I will do it. If I see who do it, I can do it also, because if she can, I can do it for sure. So this is what we discovered, and what I see from my example to work with women in business.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you very much. But I do want to touch on the networking. Do you think that networking is beneficial, or do you think that there has to be, people have to be educated towards how to network? In my opinion, in networking, when anyone has asked me, I think that when people go to networking, and you don't see too much of it anymore because other things have taken its place, but when people go to network, they really go with it's the I factor. Instead of trying to, when you step into a networking event, finding out about someone there and what they're doing, and maybe how you can assist in that in some way. Also, the very first person that they meet in the networking is not always the person that is going to enlighten them or help them. And so you have to kind of, have that mindset of who it is that I'm talking to. But I just wanted to throw that in there about networking, because now that we're doing so much stuff online, it's a little different when you're in person. But I do appreciate you about the confidence, and I agree with everything that you said. The role models, and more of those that we have, there will build more confidence. Well, thank you so much for enlightening us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sharon.
And then, you're welcome. And now we're going to move to our third speaker, Ms. Kaza Hussein, Building Bridges, Cross-Border Coalitions. And I'm going to say this before I read her bio. This entire event, everyone here, I'm sure, has engaged in cross borders, and there's a lot to be learned from that. I know I have learned a lot from cross-border coalitions. But let's speak about Kaiser. She is the global head of partnerships and market expansion at Flow Neuroscience, where she leads the mission to transform mental health care through accessible science-led innovation. With over 15 years of experience in biotechnology and health innovation, Kaiser's career has been defined by her ability to bridge the gap between complex science and real-world patient impact. A scientist by background with a foundation in stem cell research, she now oversees international business development and the rollout of pioneering medical technologies across the UK, Middle East, Asia, and Europe. Kaiser is an entrepreneurial leader passionate about forging cross-border coalitions that dismantle barriers to mental health treatment, ensuring that transformative care is accessible to all, regardless of geographic. So with that, I would like to have Ms. Kaza take the stage and speak for us.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me here, Islamic Chamber of Commerce. It's a really great opportunity to be amongst such esteemed women. So really looking forward to this conversation, and I hope everyone is enjoying also. I do have a presentation, so I'm just going to share my deck. I know not everyone has been, but I hope that will be of interest to everyone. So if you could just give me a moment and I will share my screen.
Thank you. Take your time.
I hope that is visible to everyone now.
Yes.
Yep. Perfect, thank you. So as Cheryl has already introduced me, my name is Kausa Hussain, and the session that I'm going to be covering today is Building Bridges, Not Walls. And it's really about how to forge cross-border coalitions, which many of you may have already experienced. So I hope I can support that conversation. So I have been in healthcare for a large number of years. So although Cheryl has given a little intro, I'll just share a little bit more context about the work that I do and have done in the past. So a little background. So I am a scientist by background and have worked in biotechnology and healthcare innovation for the last 15 plus years. This has been quite a varied career for me, because although my background was science, there's a lot of other skills that I've gained in the commercial world as a result, but a lot of it is always leading back to evidence and science and things like that. So I've managed clinical trials, published papers. I've done business development for international sort of expansion, and managed multidisciplinary teams with a risk go-to-market strategies or branding, science, marketing. Hence why I've picked up quite a number of skills over the years. And then the market in terms of the global reach, and how to really make that happen. So a lot of the work I've done has been across the UK, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So I've been very fortunate to be able to work in that way, which not everyone gets to do. So it has also meant that I've ended up picking up a lot of experience in different areas and different cultures, different nuances. But it has also exposed me to how women are seen in different parts of the world, different areas of business. And so there's been a lot of learning, and I think some of the speakers have already touched upon how there is an environment that has been around for many years, where often the female, especially in leadership roles, is not given the same position as a male counterpart, and for no reason apart from, I would say, the gender, because there's this, the male counterpart perhaps knows more. And I've, in my roles, been in a position where I've managed senior men who have been working in the industry for a long time, and there's always been this, I can't take an order from a female or a woman in that position, which has been quite disappointing. But it's something that I think is improving. I've certainly seen more improvement over the last few years than in previous years, and I think that has also got to do a lot with seeing more women in certain positions. And as Irina was talking about, having female role models allows more women to be a voice and take that position with confidence, which has been absolutely amazing for me to see. And I hope it continues. But throughout my journey, one of the things that I would say has been realized is there are a lot of walls that we feel. So when we're talking about, coalitions globally and bridging walls, things like that, they're not always regulatory or financial. There is a gender data gap. And that is one of the big challenges that I have found in the healthcare world, as a scientist especially. There is a unfortunate gender data gap, which ends up dividing how innovation is presented. It has meant that women are underrepresented in research, and therefore innovation obviously is not quite catering for women, which again is something that we are working to change. And people like myself who are very passionate about this conversation, this research, are working on innovation. And there's a lot of femtech founders now who are also working on this challenge, which is amazing to see. But we need to address it in order to close this gap. And it also creates a market inefficiency, because we're building data by overlooking the biological and social realities of women. And that's really half of your audience. So if you're not catering for them, you're not going to be able to meet this market efficiently. So when we aren't addressing this data gap, it will exclude women, obviously, in terms of the type of products, the type of protocols. As a scientist, it's something that I have seen time and time again, because women are not included in the research, in clinical trials for many, many years. Women weren't even part of those trials. They still aren't for a large portion of research that is done. And there's many reasons that has happened where this exclusion has become almost a norm. But, women have other responsibilities. So they may have childcare, they may be going through a pregnancy, having a baby, all of those things, and it suddenly excludes them. Or they may be in a study and then can't continue due to responsibilities of family, the home, all of these things. But that should not mean that we exclude them from research. We should work around that so that it allows for them to take part, build a actual opportunity where women can take part in a way that the male counterparts are able to. So this, I think, creates a strategic blind spot, which we do need to address. And I think we're doing far more work on now in the healthcare industry. But this would then mean that you're able to reach a larger audience and create a truly global innovation or product or service that is not leaving half the population in the shadows. So there is obviously work to do, and some examples I just want to share. So for anyone who's not in this conversation or understands what this really looks like, but the data is very compelling and the realities are quite stark. So women are 50% more likely to be misdiagnosed after a heart attack, for example, compared to men. Again, this is based on research data, etc. 70% of chronic pain patients are women, but their experiences are disproportionately underrepresented in research. And pain studies, unfortunately, again, although chronic pain is more prevalent in women, 80% of pain studies are conducted exclusively on men. And, I just want everyone to understand the reason why I'm sharing this, to just sit for a bit and think. When you look at medication, as women, we take the same medication that is given to a male, but it's often not for a female body, it's for a male body, but it hasn't been changed to address that. We get the exact same. And it's important to address these things, and I hope that we do make that happen in years to come. Another stat I would like to share is that women wait an average of 16 minutes longer for pain relief in emergency rooms compared to men. Women often have to justify why they need that compared to a man. And these are all medical kind of inefficiencies, I would class, because it's not working for the whole population. And then another disparity is in medication. Men are twice as likely to be prescribed pain medication after surgery than women, which is another gender bias. So these are things that, we need to change as a whole and improve, and we will, as the more work and research that goes into this. So what I want to sort of pivot towards is, in business, we often look at market gaps. Where is this market gap? How do we deal with it? But really, we should be looking for the care gap, because this addresses more of the human struggle. And it also means that you're addressing a far larger market by doing that. I've worked obviously in different regions of the world, and when I look at territories like the Middle East, Asia, or Europe, each of them has differences, nuances, how they deal with business, it's research, whatever it is. But the struggle with mental health, as an example, which is an area obviously I'm working in, is very similar. We have, as women, hormonal transitions, and those are prevalent no matter where you are in the world. But this is a truth that many healthcare systems aren't really equipped to treat because it's not addressed. So we need to do more to actually fill this care gap. And these things are something that we have to address as a full kind of package, rather than just pinpointing one thing. And one of the areas that I'd like to talk about is something that's called the multiplier effect. So when you are looking at cross-border coalitions and you are trying to maybe scale an innovation or reach a larger audience, what you need to look at is, rather than focusing on a partner that may address a small audience, you need to find a multiplier who has infrastructure, operational infrastructure, systems in place. The incentives are aligned where they are also addressing that already. They may already have an audience that you are trying to reach. And it's almost like difference from working with a partner to a multiplier is like adding a lane to a road rather than building a high-speed, rail network where you're trying to reach innovation at scale or improve infrastructure at scale. So a partner reaches a few people, where the multiplier will actually help you reach a larger audience and scale exponentially. And it also could mean that you do that in one country or one region, and you can basically replicate that in another partnering territory or region. So what does this involve when you're looking for multiplier coalitions? So you will need to basically identify what this could look like. And internationally, whether your home countries, obviously I am UK based, so a lot of work initially takes place here, and then I'm able to potentially replicate that or create a similar version in Europe or Asia or wherever we're moving to. But the methodology remains very similar. So initially, I would say that you need to identify the gatekeepers for that particular region. And this could be the infrastructure itself. For example, is there a digital community that you can work with, or a public health body, or perhaps like a large retail chain, like a pharmacy, which I've put in here, that helps you reach a larger audience. And then when you're approaching them, you don't approach them as a vendor. You are working with them to address or solve an issue that they may already be dealing with, and it could be affecting their core demographic. So, for example, if we look at women's health, it's a large industry now, but there is areas that we could isolate and say, okay, well, this is affecting the expansion of a particular product because we're not addressing how it affects a female, or how to market it for that female patient cohort. So if you find a partner that can be your multiplier, find somebody who is already dealing with that demographic and is potentially addressing that particular issue. And then leveraging local expertise. This is so important because they know their local community, their local market, the conversations, the education far better than you would if it's not your local market. So to make it inherently scalable, you need to empower your partners, support them with campaigns, with education, support the data. And this is really important, the evidence behind a lot of what you're trying to support. And this isn't always science-based, but any evidence, even with say it's a app for the finance world, you will still need data. You will still need to be able to show how it is supporting or addressing a particular question or concern. So find that so that you can empower the local partners to expose you to that local community. So having a strong partner will always be really important. And these can look very different for different things, but it could be grassroots organizations, communities, charities, international NGOs, bodies that are working to address an issue. It could be a digital community where they are advocating for something. And this day and age, obviously, digital is a far greater partner or empowering partner than before, and it will reach a larger audience. So you need to start identifying in those ways so that you can start to build these multiplier conversations. So what does this mean in terms of scaling a legacy? In reality, what you're trying to do is design solutions that are adaptable for a more diverse population. So you're addressing a larger group of people, which should always be the goal. But as I mentioned previously, often the focus is on the easier audience, or where the data is already present. So you're not trying to perhaps spend resource and time developing, but if you develop that at the start, you are going to find that you end up with a larger audience, and then you're building a system so that it becomes a larger movement, a bigger campaign. And in reality, as a business or organization, you are showing that you actually care about the entire community rather than just half of that community. And in terms of how that looks for leadership, and going back to building bridges, I think it's very important to understand that it won't just be about the volume of what you're doing, but what the scientific truths are for this, in healthcare. That's obviously very important. But as I said, it could be the data truths, the research truths, whatever it is, to ensure that if we're looking at healthcare, we don't want any patient to be invisible. But for a larger corporation where, say, finance is the goal, then you don't want any customer to be invisible, whether it's an age barrier, gender barrier, whatever it is. So you're going for a larger market. And to women leaders who have joined this conversation, I think what I would like to stress, I guess, is that you will often find yourself in a system that isn't built for you. It's not addressing things that are challenging for you as a woman, and especially in leadership. There are many barriers that you have to overcome in order to keep growing. So if the system is not built for you, don't try to fit in. You need to build a bridge that leads to a new standard of care, but a world that, where we build for women, we build for the world. And I think this is something that we can do with small little changes, but overall it will have a larger impact. There's going to be, going back to the science roots, the number of women in science has grown quite exponentially over the last decade, and even further back than that. But that's because young girls are seeing more women in that industry. They're hearing more, there's more campaigns, there's excitement about it. They are also being encouraged. And I think that's also really important, having that encouragement, having that network, where you're surrounding yourself by people who support your work, who are pushing you, providing you with confidence, and in turn, you will be able to do that for somebody else. So, providing some of your time to maybe students, female students who are looking to explore, I think is a great way to show them that, you can do, far more than you could have imagined, and how they can do it. There's a lot more women out there who are providing support and mentorship, which is also really important, because I think many of us have grown up without that. And if we can provide that for others, that is definitely a huge win for everyone. I will leave it there. Cheryl, if that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And I do have a few things, but I'm not going to really drag on. But there were some things that I found to be that I'd like to have a little bit more information on, just briefly. And I know that you're based in the UK, but in your research, did you find that mental health is occurring in one region more than the other? Number two, in reference to pain medication that's given out, in the US, it has been sort of tapered that pain medication cannot be so readily given out. Now, I don't know if you found that in your research. And number three, I read your post, and you have a question on there that I want to present, and maybe the other panel want to step into it. Your question was, what is one invisible gap in your industry that needs more honest, grounded conversation? So those are my three things. And if you can briefly share with me, and maybe I went too fast, I don't know. But
Okay.
if you have them, I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Cheryl. So your first question about mental health and how that is across the globe. Interestingly, it's pretty much the same for most countries and regions. It's a genuinely a global epidemic in terms of depression and poor mental health. Currently, 280 million people suffer from depression, 1 in 6 adults. So it is a large issue, and that is prevalent in most countries. So obviously the UK is where we started a lot of our work and gone into Europe, but I've recently launched our innovation in Australia, in Hong Kong, currently working in the Middle East. And honestly speaking, it's an issue wherever I'm having these conversations. But the bigger, I think, conversation is the fact that it's not spoken about enough. So it's almost like something that is seen as a very negative to discuss or share. But this is the case for both male and female. In fact, it's probably harder for the male patient to address it or go and seek help, which is why our innovation has actually been very useful, because they can access it and, treat themselves. And it just goes to show that actually making things accessible is so important, because many people will not go and see their doctor or healthcare professional to seek that help, or maybe even understand that they may be having these issues. So unfortunately, this mental health conditions are prevalent worldwide and growing, especially in the younger generation, which is what we're seeing more and more, especially after COVID and what happened during that period. Hopefully that addressed that question. And your second one, you'll have to remind me, Cheryl, I'm so sorry.
Okay, the first one was mental health.
Yeah.
The second one was about the pain medication. And
Okay.
is it the same across border regions? Because here in the US, they are backing off of giving out so much pain medication.
Yeah, I think that is probably spreading everywhere. In the UK, certainly, we don't try and give pain medication unless it's really necessary. And this is a result of over-prescribing in the past, where, people have unfortunately ended up accustomed to that medication, and then it's very difficult to take them off. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle. But in terms of, I think, the data that I was sharing, a good example of that would be that as a woman, if you were to go and see your doctor, describing any issues that you're having, and it might be chronic pain related, you will have to justify, prove, and give far more information before that is addressed and dealt with. And it sometimes also gets miscommunicated with regards to, maybe it's something to do with a woman being pregnant, or menstrual cycles and things like that. So it won't get addressed as quickly, whereas a male won't have those questions, and because they will just be like, I have this issue, and it gets addressed much quicker. But in terms of pain medication overall, I think the global sort of route is to reduce that as much as possible. And there's also far more holistic things people can do, which is improving how medication is seen. And then in terms of the final question about invisible or gaps, and I think I probably addressed this already in a lot of what I've discussed, but the gender data gap for me is a huge thing, because
Yes.
we're missing that. I'm working on a study at the moment for women who are the cohort is studied just for women, and because this hasn't been done before. So I think that is an area that I see all the time. And then the other thing would be the fact that leadership conversations, leadership support for women is very different compared to men. We've already said the fact that a female founder often finds far less support, whether it's investment or otherwise, compared to a male founder. And this I see all the time. I obviously work in a startup, and I am exposed to quite a lot of this conversation with other startups also. So unfortunately, that is something that has not changed and certainly needs to change.
Yes, thank you so much. And I totally agree with everything that you said there, and you've given some interesting points. And we're now going to move on to our fourth speaker, and she is Miss Jessica Robinson, Scaling Impact and Sustaining Momentum. And let me just give you a brief on Miss Robinson's bio. Jessica, she is a globally recognized expert in sustainability, climate finance, and regenerative economics, with more than 25 years of international experience spanning the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Her career has combined strategic advisory, market development, and thought leadership, positioning her as a trusted advisor to governments, regulators, financial institutions, and investors navigating the transition to sustainable and inclusive economic growth. She has worked extensively with governments, regulators, and development institutions across the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Europe, and North America to design policy frameworks, mobilize capital, and build sustainable finance markets. In parallel, she has advised corporates, financial institutions, and institutional investors on strategic investment and implementation, across climate finance, sustainable investment, carbon markets, and gender finance. Okay. Jessica has founded and led multiple think tanks and advisory platforms focused on sustainable finance and system change, and previously served as a partner at a Big Four consulting firm where she led the sustainable finance and ESG practice across the Middle East and North Africa. She brings a truly global perspective, having worked extensively across the Middle East and Africa, and currently based in the UAE, notably China and Hong Kong, Europe, and North America. A widely published thought leader and frequent international speaker, Jessica contributes regularly to global discussions on sustainable finance, climate strategy, and regenerative economic models. She is also the founder of Moxie Future and author of Financial Feminism, and is currently writing her second book on women and leadership. And with that, we would like to hear from Ms. Robinson, from Jessica.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, I'm gonna keep mine short and sweet. I'm very conscious that 2 hours is quite a long stretch, so people are probably eager to get moving. Just to give context to what I'm just going to talk briefly about. So yeah, I've sort of 25 plus years in the climate, sustainable finance, and gender space. And as Cheryl was saying, I've got a very global experience. I was in China and Hong Kong for many years. I'm now in the Middle East, and I also do a lot of work in Africa. I have a company in Africa looking at sustainable finance. I've also lived and worked in London and New York, so I have done quite a lot of global work. I do spend a lot of time in the rooms where decisions get made. So I've done a lot of work in designing systems, shaping markets, particularly around climate and green finance. But I also have a sort of that's my day job. You know, I'm actually quite an activist in the investing that I do, the writing, the building, particularly around women and gender finance. As Cheryl mentioned, my first book, Financial Feminism, was really about women and capital. And I'm now working on my second book about women and how women lead, because I'm an advocate for the more that we get women into leadership positions, whether that be in politics, economics, finance, whether it be in the civil society. I think we all know we're going to end up in a much safer, cleaner, kinder, more equitable world. So that is something I'm very passionate about. I think really, you know, we just have to sit back and acknowledge the reality we're in. We're not in one crisis, we're in multiple intersecting crises. We're in the middle of the war, and I say someone, you know, in the Middle East right now. We've got the climate crisis, we've got inequality, we've got an erosion of democratic and good government. We're seeing a social breakdown, and we're seeing this across the world. And all of these are very interconnected. And I think there's a really uncomfortable truth here that leadership that created this cannot fix it. You know, we've built this leadership model, and this is sort of across countries and across cultures, which are competitive, extractive. They're focused on the short term. There's, it's very exclusive for the few, not for the many. And for some reason, we seem to keep rewarding it, and we really need to think about how we change this. So what does leadership actually look like? The leadership that we need. My view very strongly is that we know we don't need more of the same with some minor tweaks. We need a completely different model. You know, we actually need emotional intelligence. You know, in my view, that's strategic capability. I've run companies. I was a partner at a Big Four. You know, really doing good work is strategic. It's not reactive as well. We need collaboration, not competition. We need stewardship, not extraction. And we need long-term thinking. And I think all of us know that long-term thinking is about multiple generations. It's not about Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Sorry, excuse me. Oh, what I want to say is I think it's not idealism. And I think some of the women have already spoken about this very strongly and very passionately. We know what delivers better outcomes, and we know what to do. So, you know, this is not sort of an ideal state that we want to get to. I think most of us know what needs to happen. I talk a lot about in my book and my work about this version of sort of power with versus power over. Power over to me is around control and dominance, whereas power with is something around collaboration, collective agency. And if you look at a lot of our systems now, they're built on a power over kind of model. You know, they're very centralized, hierarchical. As I said before, they're very exclusive. And we see not only does that lead to bad outcomes, it actually blocks the better outcomes as well. And it selects for a very narrow type of leader. You know, someone, excludes women, excludes the voices of the global South, it excludes the non-elite, it excludes indigenous communities as well. And again, it keeps optimizing time and time and again for short-term and extractive decisions. Whereas power with, and this is where I think we really need to move the discussion, it's about shared agency. So it's collaborative, it's distributed, people working together to shape those outcomes, combining their different perspectives. That's exactly what we need today more than ever. And my belief, and hopefully what I will demonstrate in my new book, based on a lot of research, a lot of anecdotes as well, right, is that women really, really change this equation. It's not about superiority. And I don't think I think it's distracting if we have a conversation of men versus women. It's not. But the fact is, and the one commonality that I suspect all of the speakers have today, is that we have an experience around exclusion, right? So we see the system much more clearly because we've been excluded from it. You know, we build rigor, not entitlement, because, we've had to work hard to get there. And that's something when I was a partner of Big Four, I was like 10% female partners in the Middle East, right? And that was a hard job to have. And it was hard to sort of make my voice heard. But I also think we as women, because we're excluded, we expand that lens of value. So we don't just think about financial return. We think about long-term consequences, right? We think about human impact. What's missing in the room and exactly what needs to be done to address this crisis. And I do think we do lead through connection, right? We lead through the relationships we have with one another, the trust we build, that sense of doing the right thing. And so really my argument is very much women demonstrate across all dimensions that this is something that we can do. And the more we elevate women into these positions, the better outcomes we will have for the whole of the world, right? We see it, and there's a lot of evidence. We have better company performance, more women on boards, more women in senior leadership positions, not just financial returns, although that is correct, but also non-financial impact. We see it around climate action in corporates. We see it boardrooms, board members, female board members turn up to those meetings well prepared. They ask the right kind of questions. And that's what we need more of. And there's so much evidence around the corporate and the financial sector that really supports that. We see when you have more women in parliament or in government positions, they build stronger climate policies. We see it in organizations in civil society around resilience. We see it in peace negotiations, peace treaties. There's like a whole load of data that says if there are more women involved in peace negotiations and the treaties, they last longer, they're more equitable, and therefore they're much more resilient as well. Even corruption, I mean, not even corruption, I think that's an obvious one, right? More women in leadership positions really, really positively affects on the reduction in the rates of corruption. So again, I come back to the thing, I don't think it's idealism. I don't think it's aspiration. I think we have measurable evidence. The question then becomes, why are we still treating women's leadership as a sort of an optional decision? I do think this power with model, we need to talk a lot more about it and actually be really proud of it, because we should be proud that we can share authority, that we can build coalitions. And I know that the other speakers today have spoken quite a lot about that. But I think, really looking at how those leadership models, how women tend to lead this way through trust, through relationships, we do need to talk a lot more about it. Because I think, given the state of the world, we need good news stories, and we need to elevate these examples of true leadership. Now, that all said, I'm not gonna shy away from the barriers, because I think we all know them. We've touched on them a lot today. Corsa talked a lot about data and how that drives stuff, which I think is super critical. But it's not just about confidence. The structural barriers are so significant. We really need to sort of drive change. And I'm a big fan of affirmative action. People say we shouldn't force 30% women on boards. Yes, we should, because nothing's going to change if we don't, right? I hear a lot around sort of the pipeline myth. So women are not ready, which is absolute rubbish. We know that. I sit here in a region where I've done a lot of work in Saudi. I've done a lot of work across the Middle East. There are so many capable women, so many women much more capable than their male counterparts, because they've had to work so hard to get there. They've got double the number of degrees. They work much longer hours, and they are, so I think that sort of women are not ready, we have to push back on. There's this sort of double bind as well, and this is different culture to culture, but men get labeled as assertive, women get labeled in a very negative tone. Men get labeled as strong, women get labeled as emotional, right? So we're in a very difficult situation. The capital piece, we've already talked about it, so I won't go on to that, but we're not getting the funding, less than 2% venture capital funding, right? So we've been talking about this for now, and I'm sure we can all mention, we've been working on this for years, but here we are. It hasn't increased, has it? But I do think, the system, and I think, again, the system has not been built for us. We know that, right? But we can't stick on that, right? We can't keep internalizing that. We have to really change it up. So I guess that I'll sort of close off on what would be my practical advice. And I say this as someone, as I said, I've lived and worked all over the world. I've worked in different environments as well, but I say this as well, reflecting a lot of the research I've done for both my books, but particularly my latest book, speaking to women in many different cultures, many different markets. We have to back each other, right? So networks matter. They do matter massively. I think our networks are different to how men network. I hate going to a conference and standing at the end with a coffee, waiting to go and talk to someone, right? I want to, I meet a woman and we have a coffee, and then we start bringing other people in, and we just do it differently. So I think we need to embrace that. I think also, this thing about mentoring, it's not just mentoring, it's sponsorship, it's opening doors, it's using your voice. The capital piece, I think, is critical. My first book was really around, we know that women are moving into around 35% of global private capital, right? So we are wealth owners, and even small decisions, whether it's pensions or savings, whatever we just decide to invest in, we're using our capital to express the kind of world we want to live in. So, I talk a lot about sustainable investing, about climate, and I quite often talk about it. So if I was investing in a fashion company and I knew it used child laborers in its workforce, would any of us invest our money in it? No, we wouldn't. So we have a power, right? And we need to use that power, I think. Gender lens investing is a phenomenal movement, and I think it happens on all sorts of different levels, from angel all the way through VC funds and all the way through. So there are women out there doing it. So sort of get involved, use your capital. The other thing I wanted to say, because I am a very active gender lens investor, the one thing I'm really struck by with the founders that we, the group of women invest in, women naturally go and build businesses that solve world problems. I don't get any women coming in going, I want to launch a crypto fund so I can make billions. I get women coming in saying, I'm trying to develop this blood transfusion so we can deploy it in sub-Saharan Africa so all these clinics have access to it. That's where I want to put my money, right? So I think, there's so much we can do, and as we move together. And then finally, sort of you as individuals, or us as individuals, I always say about protecting your mission, we have to be clear about where we are adding, where our superpower is. And it's sort of, what will you not compromise on? And then how will you use your platform to amplify other women? And I think, as you climb up those stairs, really sharing knowledge, sponsoring others, using your success to create a voice and permission for others is really, really important. I grew up I started my career in management consulting in London and New York. I think I was the only female in the consulting team. It was awful. Thank goodness my daughters will not have to work in that environment, because I had no mentors, I had no role models or aspirations. So I think that generational shift, things are getting better, but at the same time, when you're given those opportunities to really use that to create opportunities to the women that follow you. And then I do think, look, there will be resistance, and I think we've seen a lot of that, obviously, since the shift in leadership, has obviously in the US has really, really impacted almost the verbalization, normalization of what it means to talk about women in their roles. But don't let that beat you down. I think we shouldn't be asking permission, right? We don't need a title or a perfect moment or validation. We just need to be strong about our conviction. And I think, and again, sort of what I hope I'm going to end up in my work and my writing is that, it's not just about individual change and individual success. It has to be about systems level change, and that ultimately needs collective action. So if anything, my call is to everybody to really focus on collective action, and actually be part of the movement, because it is happening. You just have to find your tribe and really sort of run with this as well. And I'm going to leave there because I could talk forever, so I'm not going to.
Thank you so much. And yes, a couple of points that you touched on briefly. One of the words, affirmative action. I'm just going to ask one question on that. How do you feel affirmative action, and if it is in existence, the status of it now across regions? And I want to ask, that's my first question. My second question I want to ask is, what is your message to the woman who identifies a critical problem in her community, but feels she lacks the former authority or title to spearhead a transnational movement?
That's a really complex question. Affirmative action, I'll
I'm
start with.
sorry.
Affirmative action, I'll start with. Look, I mean, yeah, because I've seen obviously lots of different movements. I am a huge supporter. We've seen it be quite effective in different markets. In fact, the UAE now legally requires at least one woman on every board. And actually that came in, and it was quite significantly and quite rapidly implemented, which meant that it started to follow through. And then organizations are created to find these women and nurture these women into board level, to give them like how to read accounts and alike. I am not going to comment on the US, right? But in the UK,
That's okay.
in fact, one of my first jobs when I lived and worked in New York, I was presenting to a regional bank. I would have been like 25. It was a regional bank in mid-America. And I went into the boardroom to present. So a British 25-year-old woman, I looked around me and there were like maybe 10 white men over 70 years old. You could have imagined how they weren't quite sure how to take advice from me, right? But anyway, so I am a huge fan, but I do think different markets are moving differently. And I mean, the data is there. We know it's a no-brainer, particularly from an investor perspective as well, right? Your second question about, I think it's sort of around if a woman feels she doesn't have a title or an authority, how does she affect change? I think that was sort of it. And it's actually, Corsa mentioned it about like the system was not made for us. I have this big thing around if we don't find a seat at the table, we need to build our own tables. And I think that's precisely
Absolutely.
what women are starting to do. Or not starting to, we've been doing it a long time, but we need to accelerate that. I spent far too long of my career trying to make space at a table, and I get there and I sit down and I'm listening to these conversations, 90% of which are men. And I think, I'm way better educated. I know what I'm talking about. I've done my research. Why did I spend so long trying to get here? Oh, I get here and it turns out I'd do much better going and doing my own thing anyway, right? So I guess my message would be don't be put off by not having that title or authority. You have so much power and soft power as well, and experience, lived experience. That is what you have to build on. And I think as more senior women, our job now is to build the belief that younger women can step into these roles. And I think, that's the exciting thing I feel when I feel really down at the moment. I look, I have a 19-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old daughter, and I think, oh my goodness, they have the tools to go out there and do stuff, right? To really make an impact in a way that I don't think I ever did. So I'm optimistic for the future despite everything.
That's great. Thank you. And you touched on something, building your own table, not waiting to be invited. When I say we, WW has been pushing that and trying to implement that in a lot of countries to build your own table. Don't wait for someone to invite you. Definitely that. And I appreciate your touching on the affirmative action. And yes, we could say a lot about the United States, but we won't do that today. And I appreciate everything and just reading. And I would just love to have a table where all of you women are around it. And maybe we can get to that, later on. I know you said time is of the essence for us here today, and we don't want to go too much further. But I definitely encourage everyone who's attended this and listening to have a moment and maybe create a table where we can go further with these discussions with the women that have been here today, because this definitely has been enlightening. We have some powerful, impacting women here, and they deserve to not just be on this particular panel today, but to be heard in the future. So before we wrap up, I'd like to remind everyone that today's webinar was recorded and will be available for playback on ICTA platforms. And I want to thank all of our panels today, all of us panelists today, and everyone who took the time to come in and be an attendee and listen. And we'd like to get your feedback. And if there's anything further that the panels would like to say, please let me know.
Cheryl, sorry, I had my hand raised. It was just because there are some questions in the Q&A section that some of the attendees have asked, perhaps. I mean, I know we have only got a few minutes left, so we might not be able to address them, but the ICC might be able to get back to them.
Right. I would like to, I'm trying to bring up my panel. And if anyone can get there before me, let me just see. I mean, my chat, I'm sorry. Let me see what's in the chat. I did.
It's the Q&A
Okay.
section if you go in there.
Let me see. Uh, I'm looking for the Q&A, and I guess it's my system or the technology today that if anyone can pull that up and just, oh, wait, just one second. I think I've got it. Technology is amazing. Okay, we have our first question. How can women in entry-level positions start building their leadership voice when they don't have a formal title? I think we kind of touched on that a little bit, but does anyone want to take that question? Any one of our panels? Yeah, no takers? Okay. We have a second question. How can we change?
Maybe,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
maybe
sorry, go ahead.
I try to answer. I think it's also about some way of self-confidence because formal title, it doesn't mean to be a leader to have a formal title. The leaders and I don't know, that quite often we compare leaders and boss or director. It's a different level. Can be a leader, but not can be a boss, and can be a boss or director, and definitely not to be a leader for their team. So don't limit it yourself with some title at all. Just find maybe someone who inspired you and to follow this, and also share your passions that you like in your area, your fields, maybe in your job. It definitely should be something that you can be a role model for some people and inspire them. This is about like a small step of leadership in this situation. I think it's from my opinion for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for enlightening us on that and your response to that. And we have a second question. How can we change the conversation around maternity leave so it seems as a period of growth rather than a gap in our careers? That's interesting. Anyone would like to take any one of our panelists?
Actually, I don't mind taking that because I did a post on LinkedIn about this about 6 months ago because I feel very strongly about it. And it was amazing how many women responded to me and said, "Oh my goodness, I feel this as well." You know, I've had 3 children in my life and in my career, and I have never handled any of them very well. Like after my third, I think I was back in the office for about 5 weeks, and I regret it so much. And I look at myself and I think, what a terrible example I am to be doing that. And you know, and then it's funny how people say, "Oh, like it's almost like they should talk about it with pride," and it's not at all. I think we have to address it with, you know, there is so much that comes from being a mother that we translate into our work environment, right? You know, the skills and the experiences we have, and we have to sort of embrace and celebrate that. And we have to give men more time as well to step into that role. Yeah, so that was just mine. I mean, it's something I feel quite passionate about. So
Yes,
Maybe
I do also. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I maybe will add from my experience to work with corporative businesses, with companies that we support. So some of them we recommend and they implement also and share their experience with other companies that it's maybe cheaper to keep your current workers as a mother than not support or not support her when she came back from maternity leave and trying to find someone's new, because it's always more expensive to teach someone's new than to support someone's who already work with your current workers. So that's why now in many companies we have mentorship programs, pro bono mentorship programs from other workers that support these men and women who came back from maternity leave period.
Yes. And I guess right here, I'd like to ask a question, since we talk about cross borders. Is FMLA, is that a cross-border concept? Anyone like to take that one? Okay, if not, we will get back to that, and that will be answered shortly. The next question, what is one daily habit that helps you stay mentally resilient in the face of leadership struggles? One of our panelists, please.
How do we stay resilient? Was the question.
Yes.
Try and get as much sleep as we can. Hang out with our sisterhood when we can.
That's true.
That's where I
Definitely
felt
helps.
most.
I think we are unanimous on this, on the answer on this one. That's very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like actually to add
Go
on
ahead.
this to what Jessica had mentioned, actually, and just to build on what she's mentioned. It's all about, I do believe it's about leading beyond authority, is believing in yourself, being able to understand you don't need to be given the position or the title to do something. It's about, again, and this is the power of will that I started my speech about it. It's about being able to uh, be resilient enough to be able to take steps forward, even if there are very small and tiny ones, and celebrate it, congratulate yourself, be proud of your achievement, regardless how minimal they are, to be honest. Just waking up another morning and having the energy to do everything that you have to do and be there for those who wants you. I think that by itself is really great. And last but not least is having a good support system, sisterhood, and networks that understand what you're going through. Because sometimes you only need the soundboard. You need just to vent out of, that's why I'm stressed. This is what is happening with me. And someone in front of you who's understanding what's happening with you as a challenge. And that's it. And you're done. You're over that challenge completely.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree that everyone needs one or two sounding boards and have those friends and associates who understand. And also, every morning giving yourself an inspirational rise. If that means it's something that you say daily or something like that. But I totally agree with everything you said. Our next question is, who was the one woman who inspired you the most?
Maybe I will try to
And,
answer what it was. And
oh,
to be honest,
okay.
here is not one woman. It's just woman, yes. So because I put the list in the chat of our panelists, and I quite like to discover some histories of women who did something like a first. She was the first. I very like these stories. And what we discussed today about research, for example, or leaderships, I quite like the book Caroline Paris, Invisible Women. She is a researcher. She researched a lot of companies in terms of how they created products for women or without women, and most of them without women. And it was a topic where she trying to discover why. Sheryl Sandberg, Melanie Perkins with her canvas, designs that we all, I think everyone used the canvas, but before she won this, everyone reject her maybe more than 100 times that she shared in so many women's. And I really encourage everyone to discover their stories, because quite often they start from the same level, the same background, the same similar life as you, but small steps give them this I don't know, the winner's level maybe, or this title of leaders in women worlds. So yeah, thank you.
If I may
Thank you very much.
to add on, Irina, this was
Yes.
beautiful what you said, because I do believe we get inspired from every female woman around us, whether even older, younger, more successful, or in this journey of being successful. I think that's really important to be inspired by everybody around you. This is number one. And I will add to this, actually, who is my inspiration. I would really say also our males, like maybe our fathers, brothers, husbands, colleagues. There are also males, and I do recommend reading the book The Hero with 1,000 Faces, where each individual, actually in every decision in our lives, we are the hero in that journey. And every time you overcome a challenge or a situation or make a decision, a big decision in your life, or even live in your ordinary world and you move to a different level, you are the hero of that journey. So I think each one of us inspires us, but definitely who stands out is those people who are true to themselves, genuine, and have empathy and able to be adaptive enough to be able to listen and hear the other.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's very, very and enlightening and touching on males and their support and inspiration. I'm going to say this right here and now because WW has quite a few males that are very, very inspiring. They are always supporting us, and I found that throughout LinkedIn, and it's been great. In addition to that, I have 3 brothers, so but thank you for your answer. Okay, we have one more. If you could go back to the very first day of your career, what is the one thing you tell yourself, your younger self? Anyone want that one?
I think we should all answer that.
Yeah, I think so.
That's very true. Okay, let's go.
Okay, good. I'll start very quickly. I would say that I would just have started building my own table and stopped trying to get a seat at the original one. I would have started that at the age of 18.
Right. Great. Next.
I would say to my younger self, you create your own path. You will create your own path, and you can.
Great. That's great. That's very inspiring. And next.
Maybe in terms of knowledge, I would say that learn more language that I know. Yeah, German, English, I don't know, Italian, Spanish. It's a very open world if you know more language, and I very encourage everyone to speak their own language and additional more and more and learn more and more. Yeah, thank you.
Right. I definitely agree with that one, and I'm going to chime in on that. I know if my teacher from high school would be here now, she would say you should have sat in your seat and listened to your French a little bit more because after I left and got a job, every company and every law firm I worked for has French-speaking clients. So definitely I agree with that one. Anyone else? If you could go back to the very first day of your career, what is the one thing you tell your younger self? No more takers? Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to maybe one of the organizers might want to have to say something for closing, or if not, we'll proceed with closing.
Thank you so much for today.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the organizers for having me as the moderator. We had a little bit technical difficulty starting out, but I think we had some great conversations here. We've heard and been inspired by these women that are on the panel. And as I said before, I'm looking forward to trying to catch up with each and every one of them at some point in time, maybe at an event, maybe at a table that we can build. With that, I would like to thank all of the organizers, thank all of the panel, and thank all of the attendees and all of you who have spent your time today listening to us. We so very much appreciate you. And with that, we will talk with you later. Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you
day.
so